Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention. Maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. G'day everybody, and welcome to another episode of Voice of Gord. I'm Gord, and this is my voice. The other voice you're about to hear today is of someone who's trying really hard to deal with a very difficult situation, and whom I've spoken with back channel quite a bit over the last few months as I've been covering the story of political prisoners in Canada. You might know them as the Coots Four. One of the Coots Four is the partner of the young lady you're about to hear from tonight. Please welcome to the show, Jaclyne Martin.
Hey, Gord. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a sensitive subject, and I just wanted to provide you the opportunity to tell you and Jerry's side of the story, and vent a little from your place as the wife of an enemy of the state, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story so far. One that can't quite be told in full by any means because story's not over. So it is definitely a sensitive topic to try to discuss in any type of a public manner. I'll just be upfront with your guests that this is really the only second time really that I've done any interviews at all whatsoever, as far as speaking about it with my own voice. So the reason behind that is because, of course, when you're in a situation like this, everything you say will be held against you. So it's an interesting situation to find yourself in, one that's drug out for way too long. So my name is Jaclyne, and Jerry Morin is my common law partner. I just say my husband for simplicity. And he's been in captivity, so we'll call it, a remand center since February 14th, 2022.
So this is what, 600 and are we 620 odd days now almost?
Yeah, very well. I'll be honest. If somebody doesn't tell me, I don't know. It's not something I count. I know that it's interesting, for people to watch that from and of course we've been programmed literally by the media for so long. And so, tag things, screen tags with countdowns or count ups, and, all of this stuff is great for raising awareness, but for people going through it, the last thing you want to do is count how many goddamn days it's been since you've been able to hug your partner, have a meal with them, all the things, right? So I don't count them. It's not something that I care to do. It doesn't really matter to me the number of days. More than 24 hours, as far as I'm concerned, was more than necessary, which is what I spent there as well. So
yeah, you were arrested and charged during the whole
yes.
shit show, which flowed from the sort of RCMP raiding the Coots protest site. Could you clarify for people? I mean, I know this, but some of my listeners and people who might tune into this show might not. Is that it's well understood by those of us who've been paying attention to the Freedom Convoy and its aftermath that the protest site in Coots, like everybody had sort of decided to leave the day before Trudeau invoked the Emergency Measures Act, and then all of these arrests took place either before that happened or the next day. So what exactly happened with you and Jerry?
Well, interestingly enough, we had nothing to do with that. any of that raid or any of those arrests. We weren't arrested in Coutts or anywhere near Coutts. We live about 4 hours away from Coutts, and we traveled down there to see what was going on a couple of times. Actually, I was the one that went originally to take a look, see what was happening. And Jerry wasn't even in the province when the convoy started. He was actually on Vancouver Island doing a cement job with a buddy of his, because he was kind of in between busy time at his regular job as a power lineman. So when everything was starting up here, kicking off with the convoy, he was busy at work. And so I was the one, working from home, because of course the crazy shit show of masks and vaccines and paranoid people and all that stuff. Most of my work was getting done through email and telephone calls. So I had lots of time, honestly, to keep an eye on things via social media and kind of know what was going on. And of course, with Coutts kicking off after, I don't even remember whether, I think the convoy had already left, I believe, from Alberta and was on the road to Ottawa when Coutts started. I think, I don't even remember. I just remember watching it all unfold on social media. Like a lot of people there, I don't even know how many people would have left to go down to Coutts originally or any of that. None of us.
It should be useful to note at this point in the story that, for those who don't know, that the Freedom Convoy was extremely decentralized, extremely spontaneous. There wasn't really any leadership to it, so to speak, until, they kind of were on their way to Ottawa, and the Coutts thing was separate from Ottawa. The Windsor thing was separate from Ottawa. All the guys that organized themselves in Eastern Canada did so on their own. There was not really any quote unquote central command, or the only real thing that kind of got big in the eyes and minds of the media and the government was when Tamara Litch started the, GoFundMe to try and raise money for the Ottawa people. But what we're talking about here, there's not really anybody in charge. And there were people from Alberta who went to Ottawa. There were people from Alberta who stayed in Alberta and went to Coutts or didn't go to Coutts at all or whatever, right?
Yeah, it was. I have no idea, how that all sparked off. We just, there was lots going on the internet, on social media. Everybody was keeping an eye on things, and that sparked up that, hey, somebody decided somewhere along the way to go to Coutts, and it had a big presence. There was quite a few people. I don't know what the number was, but it turned out to be pretty popular after it got going. And so, I mean, lots of people went down to check it out, and things looked great down there as far as peacefulness and starting to get some organization together as far as food and supplies and all of that stuff, right? And securing shelter and all of that. So I had traveled down and back a couple of times just to, visit, see what was happening, and bring some supplies, like, food, usually propane once, just to make sure that people had what they needed, because they'd essentially put like a barricade of police check stops around the town of Coutts. So it made it difficult originally for people to get in with supplies.
Right. And from what I understand, Jerry's participation with Coutts, such as it was the same as yours.
Minimal, very minimal.
Yeah, well, the same as yours. Bringing groceries and other food items to Coutts. Yeah. And I understand one of his friends is some country singer that he organized her to go there and perform.
Yeah, Lindsay Butler. Yep. Yeah, she had been impacted as well, like everybody. I mean, everybody had been impacted for the most part, whether, they had succumbed to the mandates or they didn't, they were impacted. So it just became a place, of course, for people who were affected negatively, whether it be psychologically or economically or physically or all three or whatever, right? To come together and kind of take a deep breath and lean on each other and kind of begin to deal with the trauma of what was actually happening to us at that time. Because it was crazy that people wanted to shove things in your body that we don't even know what the hell it is yet still. You know what I mean? So that was traumatic for a lot of people. And it was important for people to come together and feel like they were surrounded by people that understood. I think honestly, people even felt safer together. Security that was created by being around people that were like-minded, right? So it was an interesting time, but yeah, our participation was minimal, and we stayed for 2 consecutive nights on a Friday and Saturday night at the last weekend. And we'd stayed at one of Jerry's friends locally in town in Milk River. We spent most of our time in Milk River because that's where the kind of the party was, like that's where everybody was at. Like most of the
Can you tell people how far away Milk River is from Coots?
Milk River is probably, I don't know, maybe 40 minutes or something. I don't even know if it's that long, actually. If the back way, it felt like maybe a half an hour or something, right, to get there.
Right. So
Because you had
this,
to go out all the way around the back road, because the barricade that was there on the highway was there by the RCMP in Milk River. You couldn't get past Milk River. Like if you didn't know how to get to the back road to get into, like you couldn't get into Coots. I never was able to drive my vehicle into Coots. Like I parked in private property in a farmer's field, like adjacent to Coots, because that was the only place, like you couldn't, they weren't going to let you drive through the check stops to get your vehicle into town, right? So you had to park in a field and walk up through the check stops and, up to the saloon, where it was kind of like the whatever the stronghold, right, or the headquarters. I don't know what you'd call it, just the spot, the squatter spot, right, where they rented.
yeah, I mean,
And
Coots is a very tiny little place. There's not much
it's a
to it
blip.
other than
It's a
what
blip.
there's the border crossing and a gas station and a bar. That's basically it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I learned afterwards through like watching the EMA inquiry and all that crap that there was a hotel there and stuff too, apparently. That I was like, interesting.
So
Never saw
so
that.
you're up in Milk River. Am I
Yeah.
to take it that like a certain portion of, for lack of a better word, participants in the demonstration at Coots were also staying at Milk River and traveling back and forth all the time? Was there
Well,
any
so
connection
people,
between these two groups?
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I think there was definitely connection and discussions happening between both groups. Because kind of what had happened was the people that had gone to Coots originally kind of got isolated there. They were kind of stuck there because the police had put a barricade at Milk River on the highway. So I mean, you couldn't get to Coots that way, right? And then they basically weren't routing traffic through the border. It didn't seem like, according to what I was hearing, because there was no way to get up the highway, right? Like when they get up the highway, there was the barricade. So they would let, I mean, when we were there, if there was a commercial vehicle that came through, they would let them through. So I assume maybe they were letting them back through the other way, but there just wasn't, I didn't see any traffic rolling around anywhere. It was like they had already rerouted them somewhere else or something, right? So, but they were kind of isolated down there because they basically made it very two definitive areas, right? And because Milk River's where you come to first, most people just stayed there, right? And that was done up, where once one lane was, and everybody off to the median, or not the median, the shoulder of the road. But basically one lane off to the shoulder were vehicles parked on both sides, and then people were using the median, were parked in there. People brought their campers, people were staying in their own vehicles. People had tents. It was February. I saw a tent set up, literally tents. Yeah, like there were some hardcore people dedicated, like it. So
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in Ottawa the first day of Freedom Convoy myself, and I went with some friends to an overpass about 50 clicks west of Ottawa to sort of welcome the sort of Western convoy into town. And then, I think static temperature it was 25 below, but with wind chill it was more like 35. Like it was pretty damn chilly, and it stayed that way all weekend. So, you got to be pretty hardy to be protesting in that kind of weather.
well, it's windy too in down that Lethbridge way. So you mean I don't know that there's a day that the wind doesn't blow. So you're always guaranteed to get that freaking, cold ass prairie wind to down there regardless. So
That's right. Can you clarify for me was the border crossing completely closed, or were they letting trucks through in dribs and drabs? Like, how did that work?
I don't know for sure because I mean I wasn't there enough to understand the flow of traffic, like only what I had witnessed and then what I'd heard. And it sounded like they were letting like some through to begin with, like just little bits at a time. And then it seemed, well, and we've learned too, we're learning through court that it sounds like the RCMP kind of took over that building where the CBSA were and made that like a headquarters for them locally to work out of. So it seemed like they were rerouting or had rerouted the traffic, or, you know, didn't have enough traffic coming through that they really needed to, you know, be heavily staffed, and the RCMP were operating out of there. So, I mean, I honestly couldn't tell you, Gord, definitively what exactly was happening through there. Originally, we had heard reports that they had commercial traffic backed up a little ways. And then that kind of dissipated. So, and I do believe that they had let like some roll through as well at Coots, like the guys there that had their tractors and stuff blocking some of the road. Like it wasn't completely blocked off always. There did come a time though when it did become completely blocked off, and that seemed like after there was no traffic coming either way. You know what I mean? Like where there was nothing had happened for a long time. And then they just, you know, rolled their stuff out there. But it was sporadic, and I have no idea what normally comes through there for traffic. Like it's not something I'm
Right. Well,
versed on.
as you said before, you live fairly
Four
further up
hours
north.
away.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
So
live fairly close to Calgary.
yeah, about an hour or well, yeah, 40 minutes or so north of Calgary. So central Alberta.
Right.
And
So you're not normally down in Coots or Lethbridge or that neck of the
no,
woods.
not usually, no, not on any type of regular basis, like maybe for work or something here or there, or but yeah, no. So it was, you know, again, most of the bigger crowd and where people had come to, like, of course, it's kind of like anything else. First place you come to is kind of where you end up going, right? So, and a lot of people didn't know that you could get around the back way to get into Coots, like through a back road. So most of the action, you know, started happening in Milk River and stayed there. And it became, you know, this original, you know, kind of group of people, and then sporadic visitors here and there down in Coots. So I got quiet down there, and the mood down there wasn't as fun and loving, right? Like it was kind of like somber, and you know, here we are doing our thing, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't quite, not all the days anyways, because again, it was limited access for most people down there, and they were having a good time up in Milk River. So there was no
Right. So
really
there's a
big
party
need.
There's a party in Milk River, and there's a party in Ottawa, and Coots is kind of isolated from everybody.
It's yeah, they were kind of keeping it good and isolated, so it wasn't as big of a party going on there. But the kids were having fun. They were playing street hockey, and you know, people were still having meals together, and you know, it wasn't a bad time by any means. It just wasn't the same style atmosphere because there was way less people, and you know, they were kind of the same people every day, right? Because they were all there together and had been there together for several, I think, days or even a couple of weeks at this point, right? So it was just a little bit different there. So we were excited to take Lindsay down there to sing for that group because, you know, they needed to have a little, you know, pick me up and have some of the a little bit of the party kind of come down to them, you know, and raise their spirits up. So yeah, we ended up making sure that Lindsay got down. I drove my truck, and then they followed behind, as well as actually we took a couple of Edmonton police officers. It's funny that police officer, when he's interviewed, doesn't remember this happening conveniently, but they didn't know how to get to Coots, and they wanted to go, and so we told them, yeah, come follow us. We'll make sure that you get there. And Jerry took pictures with one of those police officers actually in front of the big Canada flag. Her name was Elena, and she was from Russia originally. She was an Edmonton police officer, and she had been put on leave for not taking the vaccine. So she had come and spoke about that. She had put out a TikTok video, like that was one of her. There was a few, like Brian Dennison, you know, Danny Bulford. I can't remember Elena's last name, but Elena. They had all put out TikTok videos basically saying like, "Hey, I'm not gonna do the unlawful orders." You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna do that. That's not what I signed up for, kind of thing. And you know, decided to actually be brave enough to say no to things that they knew that, weren't right and weren't legal, really weren't lawful, at least. And so, of course, we were really putting those people on pedestals. It was really awesome to see, these people, considering there were so few of them, and like it was very brave for them to do what they were doing, considering, basically everybody was against them in their situations, right, for the most part.
Right.
So,
Well, doing the right thing and standing up against, overwhelming weight of public opinion, manufactured as it was. I mean, that's all the discourse out there, oh, this person is stunning and brave, or that was so brave. How about putting your family and your personal finances and your career at risk when you're a public servant, either a police officer or a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, and saying, no, this is wrong publicly. All right. Like that's,
it takes cojones. I mean, I think that people should do the right thing no matter what. And I absolutely do try to live my life like that. And it's not easy sometimes, I'll tell you what, because you have to be willing to compromise everything but your integrity and your morals, right? Under certain circumstances. And so I'm not endeavoring to say that that's always easy, and that there isn't, temptation that comes along with those decisions. But when it comes to those institutions that are so giant and so ideological, I'm going to say, and the way that their servitude is towards the government, I think that it does take bravery actually to stand up in those situations, because it's such a hive mindset, and it's a Goliath. So I do actually give a lot of respect to those that are willing to do that, regardless if it's, if it's just the right thing to do. Do you know what I mean? It does take balls.
right. You and Jerry having a great deal of them. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and Jerry. Like how long you guys have been together, where'd you meet, a little bit about your relationship before, the Wuhan plague troubles were forced upon us.
Yeah. So Jerry and I have been together about 5 years now. And we met it's funny, we met on Tinder. It was just, he hates when I tell people that. But it's the truth. It's the truth. So whatever, right? It's the truth. Yeah, exactly.
It's of the day. No judgment here.
So yeah. But no, we're very similar in our personalities, I would say. We both are very outgoing people, like to adventure, can't sit still very long, both have good work ethic, so it was really good fit, actually. So we like to spend time adventuring, riding our dirt bikes, or ice fishing in the winter, snowshoeing, always doing something, getting out on the lake on the kayaks, or going to BC and headed to the hot springs, or just enjoying life and making a lot of it outdoors. We both love the outdoors a lot. And travel, like it's good Mexico vacations, always fun, and like just enjoying our time together. And it works good. We're aligned politically, which makes a difference, unfortunately, these days, right? Especially with the state of the world, and especially North America. So I mean, that's important, right? Jerry's a fun guy. He's a power lineman. He loves that he does that. Like, he's very proud of his trade. It's endearing. He's the dad that you's driving around the back roads. It's like, see that 3-phase that I put in, I did that from single phase, and 2001, and that farmer over there, this is his name, and that's what he does. And I had to talk to him, and we got to be buddies, and he let us use the right of way. And you know what I mean? Like these are the kind of conversation I have while driving the back roads of Southern Alberta, and all over Alberta, actually, because he's worked all over the province. But yeah, Jerry was actually, it was awesome to find him, because I actually don't come from Alberta. I'm from New Brunswick originally. And so, it's different to try to settle into a new province that you don't have any roots in, right? It's when you come from a place where roots are deep, and people don't usually leave for the most part, right? So it was really awesome to find someone from here to, enjoy a relationship with, that could help me to learn more about the province, feel more connected to it, and get to know people from his world and his community, which was nice because it was it helped to make me feel more at home, even though I feel very much at home in Alberta. It made me feel more at home here, and nice to, kind of be into that family life and mode, for me, having, lacked that for quite some time.
Right. Well, it's sort of a cliche and a little bit of a phenomenon, I guess. But the commuters from the Maritimes, all the Newfies and East Coast people that work in Alberta, not all of them stick around. A lot of them go back and forth.
Yeah.
The down homers are kind of famous for being really attached to home. Like East Coast Canada is not like the rest of the country. Culturally, geographically, historically, it's kind of its own unique place. Each province there, especially New Brunswick, with the sort of history of Acadia and the Cajuns, and it's different to New Brunswick, which is different to PEI, which is different to Nova Scotia, which is different to Cape Breton, and then like Newfoundland, you might as well be in a completely different universe. But for you
Yeah,
to
that's
move, but
actually the only province I've never been to, seriously. And like, why? I don't know. It just never dawned on me to go to Newfoundland, which is sad because I hear it's really beautiful and there's lots of good eats there, but just never crossed my mind.
what part of New Brunswick are you from?
St. John River Valley. So, the western side, like right along borders of Maine.
Oh, so
And
like up Woodstock way kind of thing?
yeah, actually Heartland. Heartland's where
Heartland.
I'm from
Oh
originally. Yep.
wow. Do you know Upper Haynesville?
Yeah, yes, I know Upper Haynesville. Yeah, yeah.
Little ski hill there.
Yes, Crab Mountain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of my very good friends in high school, his family is from New Brunswick, and then he moved back there when he was like 19 or 20 and lived there for a long time. Then he came back to Ontario. When I was trucking, I used to go visit him there all the time. So I've been to Crab Mountain and Haynesville and Fredericton, and I used to haul a bit of military equipment, so I would go to CFB Gagetown quite often, and I've had my fair share in New Brunswick. Nice place, but I get why you would want to move to Alberta. The money's a lot better. So
Oh gosh, yeah, big time. And the culture they're two different cultures. They both have their ups and downs for sure. But when it comes to, for myself, how I feel about it, when it comes to growth and prosperity, I think that Alberta has been a fantastic choice for myself to migrate to, because I have an entrepreneurial spirit. And for whatever reason, that's not really a great fit for New Brunswick and the mindset there. And God, don't get me wrong, I love the people, but there is definitely some backwards ideas that take place there. And they're a province of loyalists, don't forget, which that's where the loyalists settled. There's a reason why New Brunswick is the way that it is. There's some deep,
yeah, there's
yellow-bellied sap-sucking roots there. So,
so I
um,
spent a lot of time in Australia. I've been down there quite a bit. Lived and worked there a couple times, and there's a quote I like to say about Australians that applies a little bit to Canada, but in a different way. But you'll get it. There's this Australian comedian and writer guy took off to go and live in England, like so many Aussies tend to do. But anyway, the problem with Australians is not that half of them are descended of convicts. The problem with Australians is that half of them are descended of prison officers. And I suppose in the Canadian context, that would be all the loyalists got kicked out of the US, went back up to Canada, and, did as they were told. That sort of mentality kind of flows from there.
exactly. I mean, it was all about being loyal to the freaking crown, right? Like, oh, I need daddy government. I can't do it on my own. Like that was the mindset of the loyalists, and quite honestly, that's permeated through most of Canada these days. So
Oh, yeah.
it's quite unfortunate, right? But yeah, I blame the loyalists. So,
So you arrive in Alberta, you come from New
Yeah,
Brunswick, you meet
yeah.
Jerry, and then you know, Jerry's got some children from another relationship, as I understand it.
Yeah, Jerry's yeah, he's one of those, you know, I don't even know what you wanted to put the label on it, but it's three babies, three baby mamas. Okay, so the life of a power lineman on project work, right? So they're kind of spread out all over the place. There's one in BC, one in Vulcan, and one in Calgary. And yeah, it's an interesting, I mean, as you can imagine, a guy with three babies and three baby mamas, it's not ideal. It isn't perfect. It's very, not typical family stuff, which is fine. There's whatever, it's not an easy thing to manage. And his middle daughter's who he has most access to. And she's fantastic, 13-year-old girl now, and her mom's really nice, and they're friends and get along, and her and I get along. And it's a really good situation there. So it's been tough to, see those, the effects of him being incarcerated on her. I mean, she's this very brave, strong little girl, like crazy brave and strong. But at the same token, like kids aren't resilient at all. That's the most ridiculous idea in the world. As a matter of fact, they are very much impacted just the same as you and I are. And depending on their age, it can, impact the way they view the world for the rest of their life. So it's, who knows honestly what the impact truly is. She's done well, and I'm proud of her. And the other two aren't as connected to Jerry, not for lack of trying. We were actually mid-custody battle with his youngest, and had been all through COVID. Unfortunately, it was just an absolute shit show in the family courts. Able to, stave things off, back them up, have you in docket court instead of being in, judges' chambers where you should be to get things worked out. And so that was a very grueling process that we were going through. Because family court is awful. It's terrible. And I
I
don't
have
understand.
heard so many stories from people who, going into the troubles, were
Mm-hmm.
already having these pre-existing problems and family
Yeah.
issues, dealing
Yeah.
with family court, dealing with spouses they didn't get along with. I mean, whatever, life is what it is,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
judgment, but having that happen and then have Wuhan plague happen and make it worse. And
Yes.
then with Jerry and yourself specifically, the Coots thing,
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine like how far that's backed things up for you guys and what
Yeah.
sort of
The
challenge it's
impact
going to be.
is irreparable as far as I'm concerned. I don't know, like we were just barely getting somewhere in our in his, quest to, so his ex had cut his access off to his son in around May or June of 2019. And so Jerry's not really into formalities when it comes to, doesn't want court, doesn't want that kind of stuff. But, by November, he had, he's like realizing, okay, I need to make this formal so that I don't have, this isn't working. And, time is passing and this isn't, happening what properly. So I need to file a parenting agreement. So, that he literally just got it filed, just before Christmas in 2019. And then of course you have to wait for your court date. So like by the time we even had gotten into court to even start to discuss it at all, primarily we were into COVID because it was March, right? So things just, it, it was, it was really awful to see how much they milked it. Like they really just used an excuse to not get anything done. Honestly, it was really quite shitty to, to watch. But we also, when we did finally start getting somewhere, like the more that, like, we would go through the periods where they would ease off, then we could get more done because we would have, it seemed like they would just give us more time in the courtroom when the restrictions weren't as severe. So we had a good judge. Like we actually found a good judge, and things were really starting to happen well. We were getting traction. We were starting, and we're doing everything, that possibly we could imagine to make it easy for his son, without having the court to tell us, like third parties, all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like it was going well. We were feeling good and starting to actually make some headway in a very difficult situation. Like his ex is not interested in playing ball at all. Like just wants Jerry to disappear. like, you know what I mean? Like completely unreasonable.
Well,
So
she kind of got her wish with this situation.
well, she did actually, which is I'm sure that she has you know, toasted herself and this situation several times since this happened, because it was very disheartening to see how much of a lack of interest to even cooperate in the slightest bit that she had, which again, it's unfortunate. That's between them, and it's sad. But you know, the children are affected in that, and so we went through all through COVID and trying to deal with that, and it being very hard because, of course, you know, Jerry just wanting to see his kid, right? And then but because of all of the proceedings, the way they were doing it, there was, you know, a hold up with that. And I mean, his son was very young. He was only 5 years old when his mom started estranging him from Jerry. So he, like, it's
Oh, terrible.
precious times, right? So like, the longer the time goes on, the more chances that he's, you know, doesn't even know him, you know what I mean? Like where he is becoming a stranger, right? And like, that was terrible to see. And it was really hard on Jerry too, like witnessing that, right? So we were already like, family court's hell anyways. Anybody that's been through it, like, it's just ridiculous. And so we were already in that. And then, but we had a good judge, and that was awesome. And like, I hope that, you know, I can't remember that guy's name right now, but he was an awesome judge, and I really appreciated him because he was being very fair and just direct. And like, as soon as he came in and took control, that's why we were starting to get things done, because he wasn't playing around with the system. He was there to get results every time. And he gave us, you know, here's what has to be done for the next time you come in. And if you come in and it's done, great, we move on to the next. If you come in and it's done, it's not, why hasn't been done? And what are the consequences for that? Right. Like, he was very good, very practical, and like rational common sense kind of guy.
Is there a
So
contrast between this family
yes.
court judge and the
Yeah.
criminal proceedings going on with Jerry and the other three gentlemen?
Yeah, that's the only reason why I get into these weeds, actually, is because that's exactly where I was going with this, Gord, is to kind of draw the parallel. Because as much as family court is hell, I have never seen a shit show like we are in right now with this criminal court, and especially post-COVID, because they act like they haven't done a lot to remedy all of these things that they did, like to excuse not doing work while COVID was going on, right? It was like they were on this permanent vacation that they're not really interested in letting go of, you know, of not being efficient and not getting things done and taking their time and every excuse in the book. And, you know, like, I swear to God, if they could, if you ask them and you're like, well, why don't you have disclosure of these people yet? They'd probably say, well, because COVID, you know what I mean? Like, that's the answer to everything. It was for 2 years, right? So like, it's, yeah, watching the lack of respect even for the court process, or the interest in making sure that things are done as they would normally be done. Like the amount of times that we've heard from lawyers, you know, spectators, whatever, people that are within the legal system say, I've never seen it done like this before, is insane, right? Like, it happens all the time that we hear, well, that's weird, or I've never seen that, right? And it's like,
So on that note, a question people looking at this case from the outside in have, and a question I first had when I first became aware that these four guys were all still being held in remand. How is it they were denied bail? Like, we're now, as we mentioned earlier, over 600 days into this, and as has been pointed out by many commentators, everybody in Canada gets bail. Cop killers get bail. People that drive their vehicles into protests get bail. Everybody gets bail, but not Jerry and not the other three. Can you speak to that?
yeah. So I mean, when it's the government that is basically charging you, in a system where the government runs the judiciary, appoints the judges, appoints the crowns, appoints the lawyers, and not appoints the lawyers, sorry, but employs the lawyers, and they all take an oath back to the crown. There's a very real power there that they have to tilt the system in their favor against you. Okay. It doesn't really matter that it's discriminatory compared to what they normally do. Their reasoning for bail denial was not because of any of the primary conditions that are required, such as, a surety, a job to go to, permanent residence, ability to check in. So, a telephone, no prior criminal records, like all of those things that you would normally need. Are you a flight risk, right? They had all the things they needed and they were none of the things that they couldn't be, so they're not flight risks, and that was all good. But there's a secondary grounds called tertiary grounds that they can use. And basically what that, from my understanding and from what I witnessed, is allows the judge to use their discretion to interpret things that otherwise doesn't exist, basically. So the judge in Jerry's case on his primary turn down for his bail was that she was concerned that the public, because of the magnitude of the accusations, that the public would feel at risk with them out, and so that they would question the validity or the integrity of the judicial system if she were to grant them bail. And then she added an extra little bit saying that she was concerned that they might harm police officers who would need to come and check in on them for their bail conditions, which there's nothing to indicate that. There's no prior evidence or history that would give way to coming up to that determination. But that was how she interpreted it. And so that was what existed in the court that day.
Boiled down, this judge who ruled on their bail denial literally pulled things out of her ass.
Yeah, she blamed the public. Basically, she was blaming the public, saying that the public, she interpreted that the public would feel unsafe with them on the streets and that they would question the judicial system. When really what she's saying is, my bosses don't want you out, so I'm just going to blame the citizens for why I'm going to keep you in here. How about that? Because they love to do that for everything.
I feel unsafe because of the bosses and managers and leadership in quotation marks of the country of Canada and the provinces and every level of government. We are ruled by like the absolute worst Kafka-esque, most bullshit, low class, low quality, incompetent, corrupt shitbirds our society has ever seen all across the West. It's not just Canada. I know I'm editorializing here and everyone's heard me say it before, but I mean, this situation with Jerry and Chris and Tony speaks to that greatly. Like, oh, so for political expediency and to please my masters, I'm going to punt these guys' lives, right? Because I mean, it's for people's lives. It's all of their kids. It's all of their families. Right. And because you mentioned that this particular judge may have had some political donations that should have caused her to recuse herself.
Well, yeah, there was a lady that did a Twitter space with us at one point that did some research, and she found out that, that this bail judge had donated 6 different times to the Liberal Party and was appointed by Jody Wilson-Raybould. I mean, whatever. It doesn't even matter. The donations mean nothing to me. I understand how the Canadian system works. And when you're appointed by politicians and you take an oath to them in a constitution that doesn't mention the citizens, well, you're not really included in that equation. So it's just the way it is. And you need a talented lawyer and, to keep your head on straight in order to go up against something like this. Because the reality is that the power is tipped against you. It just is, and that's
so you've been doing an awful lot of homework here in attempting to assist your man as best you can from where you can.
Yeah.
And I've been greatly impressed with your knowledge and understanding of the Canadian legal system, such as it is. For my American listeners, of which I have quite a few, could you maybe give a basic rundown on the difference between our system and the American system? Because some people will be like, whoa, what's going on here? This doesn't sound right. And it's not right because it's Canada.
Well, exactly. And I mean, so for the American listeners, it's very simple. Your constitution starts out with we the people, okay? Because you are the government. You just elect people to represent you and to gather and to serve your best interests. Now, I know that
In
you're thinking
theory,
right now,
in theory,
exactly. I was
theory.
just going to say, I know that you're thinking right now that, yeah, that might have been how it was designed, and that is how it was designed, and it's up to the people to make sure that that is how it's run, FYI. But in Canada, we have a constitution that's called the British North American Act. So when we talked about the loyalists here a few minutes ago, so those assholes ran away to the place that never got freed, but they told the whole world that it was the freest place on earth, because the best slaves in the world are the ones that don't know that they're slaves. So Canada is a 180. It's actually a constitutional monarchy. And if you take a look at the definition of that, what happens in a constitutional monarchy is there is a sovereign. The sovereign is the monarch, and the only sovereign body other than that is the parliament, which represents the monarch. The citizens are not sovereign. In a democracy or republic or democratic republic like America, the citizens remain sovereign. So 180, it's a complete 180. You have a represented democracy, through a republic, and we have a constitutional monarchy where we are not mentioned in that constitution, and we are governed by our government. They limit us, we do not limit them. That's kind of the Reader's Digest version.
Like you said, in theory and in the beginning, I don't know. There's probably lots of people who, I know there's lots of people who consider the Constitution not worth the paper it's written on anymore here in the US, and the limitations on the expansion of government, as can be seen everywhere in the West, not just the United States. We live in this massive technocratic administrative state that's in bed up to its eyeballs with massive corporations and transnational organizations that are above any democratic processes and are not accountable to anybody. And the Canadian government is a pretty good example of what happens when those external bodies are who the government reports to rather than the people that elect it. I think
well, it's even worse in Canada because they never did report to the people ever. That's not how, Canada is a perfect place for them to push this agenda as their starting point in the West, because we're as close to a dictatorship as you can get without actually calling it to begin with. It's an elected dictatorship where actually you assign your voice to whichever party you mark your name beside. So you give your voice up to them. They don't take your voice and represent and project it. Your voice is taken from you and you're silenced, and now your voice is that party voice. It's very easy for it to become a corporatocracy because it's lucrative. It's lucrative. They have no accountability to the people. Never did. They don't report to us. They don't serve us. And so when big corporations come in and want to run basically racketeering operations, as far as I'm concerned, with certain products, it's just a straight buy-off. It couldn't be any more simplistic as, we're going to pay you to do this. And they're like, yep, sounds great. Because there's nobody to hold us accountable, and I'm going to make a huge fucking payday off of this, right? So I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah, the lack of accountability is a big problem. And a few people have remarked on just the sheer number of scandals that the Trudeau government has been involved in, or he himself as a person, and nothing ever comes of it. And this one here a few days ago, where it was revealed that the ArriveCan app, the financing behind that was compromised, and a whole bunch of money disappeared, and well-connected people from the company who were at the app that didn't actually do anything, and like millions of dollars going out the window with no trace. And I mean, that's just, the straw upon many straws.
That's just par for the course in Canada, though. I don't even care about, this isn't a Trudeau problem, okay? People just don't like Trudeau, so they're willing to dig so they can find dirt on him. And guess what? Every damn bureaucrat, politician in that system right now, and everyone that's come before them since 150 years ago have done the exact same thing. It doesn't, one's not better than the other. They're all filth and they all extract off of our backs and off of our resources at our expense. They've been allowed to do it. That's the way this constitution is set up. It was meant for the British monarch to send their slaves over and bring back the fruits. And
I couldn't
it's never
agree with you
changed.
more. I guess the difference, I guess the only thing I'm trying to say is that it's just so brazen and accepted now, and it's like there's this sort of air of defeatism, like we just accept it. Whereas, this corruption has always gone on, but
Yes.
it's just
And
so
we've always accepted
widespread.
it. Okay, we've always accepted it. We've just gotten to a place where we've never done anything about this. We don't even normally talk about it. And so we've worked ourselves into a place where they disrespect us so openly because we are so passive peasants and allow this to take place that they just openly disrespect. Next, they'll be spitting on us in the fucking streets because we are acting like goddamn doormats. And after a while, a doormat is a place to wipe your boots. So sorry, but you cannot, there's a huge responsibility on the population that I'm not going to let people shirk because it takes two to tango in every conflict. And if you are going to disrespect yourself and let them dehumanize you and demoralize yourself down to where they can openly disrespect you, I'm sorry, but man, oh man, I can't imagine why they wouldn't.
Well, I think the Freedom Convoy was a response to what you just said, right? Like
It was,
people
yes.
were tired of being demoralized. Like I said, when I went to Ottawa, that was the first thing I noticed. It wasn't even really about the truckers at all. It was
No.
about the fact that someone finally pushed the doormat out of the way and said no more, right?
And
We're not
somebody
going to
literally
be your
called dad,
doormat.
right? It was like somebody called dad into the scene and straighten this band of kids out, right? It was like finally somebody with a big strong voice came and said, hey, settle down. Right? It's like because everybody's standing around waiting for somebody else to do it and nobody has the balls. And then people are quite all right to sell themselves out and their conscience to not have to do anything, to not have to take accountability. It's sick. It really is. And I'll tell
Right.
you what, it makes it hard for the rest of us that would like to live under moral principle standards where we hold people accountable. It does. All of the heat on us to do it. And yes, we're doing it. Some of us are doing it, but
So I hear this is why you and Jerry decided to go to Coots and Milk River.
well, yes. I mean, I was never going to allow anyone to demand that I put something in my body or else I couldn't do the fundamental things that I need to do to live a daily life in a country that extracts 70% of my income for taxes. Okay. Like I take the social contract quite seriously. And sorry, but I was getting shafted on that social contract.
Aren't we
And
all?
yeah, so like again, some of us just aren't interested in being walked all over like doormats. So it takes standing up and saying, quit wiping your fucking boots on my back.
Right. Now, fast forward to Jerry's current position and the fact that the wiping of boots or the being underneath one at very least still goes on, and you are having to exert quite a bit of effort in the fight to at least does he have a bail hearing coming up again? What's the latest update? Like where's the case? What's happening? What's going on with this envelope? Like where are you guys at right now?
It's important even like just to back it up a bit because I don't know how much you've been able to tell in your stories. I mean I do, but I don't recall at
Well,
the
I mean,
moment. You know what I mean? But
I
like
have
there's a
written these two things for Newsweek, right? Newsweek
right,
is a sort of generalist platform. They don't want to let me get too long and too far into the weeds. And there's
right.
so many weeds with this story, and then where it connects to so many other things going on in Canada. But I think I got the basics down, and I've been listening to the boys as they've called me the last couple months. But obviously you're much closer and you know more. So like you go ahead.
Well, every one of them has a different story, and Jerry's story is unique on its own. And, it's very important for people to understand that, like, Jerry and I had already left. Like I said, we spent 2 nights down there in pretty much in Milk River. And we got up early on the Sunday morning, which was the 13th, which was the morning of the afternoon or evening that they arrested the other 3 guys. And had to go home
and 9 other people. We often forget
9 other people. Yes,
there
right,
was
exactly.
13 of y'all arrested.
Right. Yes, exactly. 14 technically, when if you consider James Sowery in the mix, right? That next day. So, but yeah, so we went home because we'd already spent the time that we could. We really couldn't be there all the time. It just wasn't possible. We had work to do, and we tried where we could to go down and support, take things down and say hi and check things out and enjoy the fellowship of the good people there, but it wasn't possible to be there all the time. And so Jerry had to get back to work power lining, and I had to work and get stuff sold and figured out. And so we went home Sunday morning, and we had a house to actually look at because we were in the middle of looking at houses in preparation to move in the spring. And so we had an appointment to see a house on that Sunday afternoon. So we were up like 5 a.m. and left, which they made this big deal over a Facebook Live that Jerry and I did on our way home, which was basically like, hey, we're leaving, which is sad because we'd just been there. It's probably the busiest weekend. I had done Facebook Lives where I'd probably talked to, I don't even know, thousands of people. I literally would just go up and, talk to the lineups. It was a steady line of people coming in around that kind of a parade in around Milk River and I talked to anybody and everybody. I was basically thanking everybody that I could see for being there, because I thought it was important to let people know that what they, that coming and standing up for themselves, I was doing the positive reinforcement. Like, good boys and girls, like, here is a cookie, and thank you for coming. Basically you're doing the right thing, just to give people that positive feedback, because it's Canada and people need it, unfortunately, right? And so I'd spent like 2 days just like looking at the beautiful sight of thousands of people coming through. And I knew that, we'd all been hearing that the Emergency Act was coming, which was making it, we were still having a good time, but there was always that little bit of anxiety, because everyone knew anything about, exercising your civic rights, that if there's going to be a crackdown come, or if there's going to be any funny business happen, it's going to come from the police. And so, hearing the rumors rolling around that the Emergency Act was going to come down through, which I don't even know how we ended up with access to that information, but everybody knew it was all being talked about, that they're gonna fucking pull the EMA any day here, like any second, and like what's gonna happen, right? We're gonna get jumped. They're gonna fucking beat the shit out of us. Like, we knew that, right? Everybody knew that. It was like, hey, we don't know when it's gonna happen, but everybody keep your hands in your pockets and take that beating, or get the hell out as soon as you can if you're not going to be able to do that, right? Like, get away. But everybody was kind of nervous and on edge, because people wanted to come and bring their kids and show them what it looked like to be, a moral, principled, respectable human being and Canadian in the moment, to stand up for yourself and respect each other's decisions and rights and all of that stuff. And people wanted to come and bring their kids and show them that. But, at the same token, it was like, when are these cops going to pop off? Because they probably are, right? Like, everybody just knew that knows anything about any of the other protests that have gone on in the world, when the government's ready for it to be shut down, it gets shut down, right? And so there was always that little bit of anxiety. And so, in my heart, I was thinking, if we could just keep these numbers, if the same amount of people can come through every day at a steady rate, like, even if you can't stay, but you come and you just go through, right? You just come and say hi, stay 10 or 15 minutes or an hour, and away you go, then maybe we can keep people safe from this longer, right? Of not getting jumped by the cops. So, we basically made a video and said, hey, it's Sunday, we have to go, but if you don't have to be at work, or if you don't have anything to do over the next couple of days, like, maybe, consider going down, like, consider going and being a body there. Like, numbers do matter. When the numbers dwindle, that's probably when, the state's going to strike, basically. Right. So, Jerry and I made a plea out to people that we really wanted to see people still can keep it going, make sure that those people had the numbers that they needed to hopefully keep them safe from, the state's attack. And, that was the end of it. But they used that as like, oh, we were, I don't even know what, I guess, in encouraging whatever the hell it was that they were trying to call it, right? Because we encourage people that, the more numbers you have, the less likely it is that the state's going to beat you. So whatever, that was, their big defining moment, according to the media, about, Jerry and I, but we didn't know, but they followed us home, or they sent people to our home address from our local detachment or something. We learned that later. That the cops were watching us. We went home, did our thing, made a meal. I think we watched some Yellowstone or something. Jerry was the first time he was home in like 3 weeks. So we just were vegging out together and, enjoying our Sunday night. We went and saw the house that we needed to see, and, like normal every weekend stuff. And we had no idea that there was cops somewhere along the road or whatever, watching every move that we made. And,
isn't it interesting how basically a sort of Stasi-like operation is going on simply against people peacefully protesting and not wanting to be doormats anymore, as you put it?
Yeah. It's like, that was like, we had no idea that we were singled out anywhere. Like we're nothing special. You know what I mean? Like, so of course we weren't paying attention to anything. We don't know. We were just going about our fucking daily shits, like everything was copacetic as far as we knew. Right. And then the next day, Jerry got up and was organized his day. I mean, we'd heard first early in the morning that there had been arrests the night before in Coutts. And again, we weren't there for that. We didn't see any of it. We have no idea, other than the accounts that we're hearing from other people and through court. That's how we're hearing about what actually took place, because we'd only ever heard rumors. We didn't know, but we'd heard that there was a big raid and they'd arrested a bunch of people, and that they were probably busting up the protest, that it was probably going to be over at that point. So we were all feeling, and still, plus, you can't get to remember that, yes, Coutts is going on, but we're got our eyes glued to Ottawa on social media. Do you know what I mean? Like, everybody's still living vicariously through Ottawa too. Like, that was the big focal point. And so we're watching that and thinking, okay, well, if that protest in Coutts is breaking up, here comes whatever's going to happen in Ottawa must be coming right behind it, right? And then we'd heard that, by 4:30 that afternoon or something, Trudeau was supposed to call the Emergencies Act. So it was like, oh, Jesus, yeah, Ottawa's going to get trounced next, right? So, nobody's feeling good. We're all feeling anxious, and just, understanding that the government isn't going to come talk to us. The government doesn't give a flying fuck that we're out here. They don't care what we have to say. They're going to continue to force us to do whatever the hell they want. And now they're going to send the thugs out to beat us for even, for daring to stand up too long, and now, embarrass them and make it seem like, leave them in a spot where they need to do something, respond or retaliate. And they chose retaliate, which is sad and sick and, whatever, but it's very much representative of the vile, aristocratic, type establishment that we have in this country, who are, they look down their noses at us and they don't care that they're beating the peasants. Why would they? Right? Like, they just don't. So
Monday, February 14th.
Yeah.
Jerry drives to work.
Yeah, he set up his day. He does secondary work. He does all power line work, but the secondary work that he does as his own business. And basically it's like the stuff that the big companies don't want to do, because they prefer to do maintenance and project work. So stuff like when a farmer needs a new grain bin, or for example of what he was doing, the rancher that he was working for, which is a buddy of his, he was putting new LED lighting in the cattle barn where he's a rancher. He does cattle pinning. So like his I'm pretty sure his daughters are like Calgary Stampede, cattle penning champions. So anyways, he's got a cattle barn where they practice cattle penning, right? So anyways, Jerry's putting new LED lights in. He'd started the project in January before he'd gone out to Vancouver, and was waiting on a few supplies. And so he wanted to get that job finished up before he went back to regular power lining on Wednesday. So he called Eddie and asked him if he could get in the barn and finish that job for him over Monday, Tuesday, so that he wouldn't have any loose ends to finish up before he went back to regular work. So Eddie was cool. He didn't have any cows in the barn that morning. So he told Jerry to come along. And so Jerry got his stuff together and got his, his tools and everything, and grabbed his old truck, and away he headed down to Pritis. And again, had no idea that he was being tailed right from there, because they had been watching us at our home. And he drove, south to Calgary. He met up with a slow roll that was happening in Airdrie. He had been talking about on Facebook. So he jumped in the slow lane and, frigged around with that for a few minutes on the way down. And then, he was headed to Pritis, or kind of west of Pritis is where his rancher buddy is. So Pritis is, you take the highway down through Calgary, and then you get off on Stony Trail and you go straight west, and you're headed towards like Bragg Creek. So complete opposite direction of Coots or Milk River or anything. He got out there just about to Pritis. He was right in front of Red Deer Lake Meats is where he was, when a SWAT team came up on him and pulled him over. And he went live on Facebook when that happened, and that's how I knew it was happening, because I got the notification, and you could tell that he was nervous. Like he something, like, I didn't know what was going on. He just said, he was saying, I'm getting arrested. There's a SWAT team here, and he's taking his keys out and throwing them out the window, doing all the stuff, and, saying like, I'm good. Like I'm not resisting here or anything. And then, yeah, they grabbed him and hit him in the back of in his back and his lower back on the side with the butt of the rifle, as well as in the forehead. And we're saying some pretty stupid things to him, like asking him if he was going to cry, like just trying to humiliate him. And we're hauling him off to jail. And so,
and they treated him like this because the government had unleashed these ridiculous charges, right? Like cops are a brotherhood. When you're accused of conspiring to kill them, they're not going to take kindly to that. So like this was done on purpose.
It was, absolutely. And they had already, obviously, I don't know, this was about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know if they had already put that statement out that they had put out, because I don't watch mainstream media at all whatsoever. I don't even have cable, haven't, or satellite since 2015. So I don't have any access to that crap.
Many such cases, and you're better off for it.
Oh yeah, I made that choice on purpose. And anyway, so I didn't know what was going on at all. So I just jumped in my vehicle and headed straight towards where I knew where he was, because I knew exactly where he was. And when I was pulling up there, which is about an hour drive for me. So when I was pulling up there was just one RCMP vehicle and his truck being loaded onto a roll bed truck. And like, I literally was getting ready. It's a 4-lane highway there. So I was just going to go down and pull into the next U-turn to come back, and the phone rang, and it was Jerry, and he was at High River Police Detachment, and he was freaked right out. He was like, you need to get here right now. I don't know what the hell is going on, but they're saying something about attempted murder. Like, I have no fucking clue what's happening right now. And so I said, okay, I'll be right there. So instead of, because I planned to just stop and talk to that cop and find out what the hell is going on. So I just bypassed him altogether and headed straight to High River, High River is about another half an hour south of Calgary, in another town. So I got to High River and I went in and I said to the cop, there's a cop behind the desk. And I said, you have my husband back there. Like, what's going on? This is, I'm hearing some crazy accusations being thrown around. And he wouldn't talk to me. He was like, no, that's not how this works. He was like, you just sit down there. We'll get to you. So I sat there for about 10 or 15 minutes after I'd said, I was like, no, that's not how this works. Like, I know he's back there. Don't tell me he's back. He's not, or don't tell me to sit down or whatever. You let him call me I know he's here. So like, cough it up. So he wouldn't speak to me. He didn't give two shits. So I sat there and waited, and about 10 minutes or so later, a male and a female officer came out from the back door and called me by my name and told me I was under arrest. Take me in the back too. So I was like, oh fuck, here we go. This is definitely some sort of a trap here, right? Like, they let him call me. I mean, they don't give people the ability to call anyone but a lawyer, but they let him call me. So they obviously wanted me there so they could arrest me too and just make it easier on themselves. I never did see an arrest warrant, but I don't even know if that exists yet. So, but they arrested me and attempted to interrogate me about this raid that they had done at Coots the night before. And I was like, I have no idea what to tell you. I wasn't there. Like, I have no idea. You obviously know that I was not there. I'm not sure how I'm going to tell you anything about something that I didn't have anything, wasn't even witness to. Like, maybe you could tell me what's going on, seeing as how, from what I understand, there was a whole bunch of you guys there. Like, what do you mean? Like, I was like, it was still such a strangest thing. And I was like, what the fuck do you want from me? I just showed up here. I just heard about it too. Like, and anyway, I talked to a lawyer, and because they had given me these two charges that they had decided that I was charged with when they first arrested me. And one of them was mischief over 5,000. And the other one was this new infrastructure bill that they had put out. But the way it was worded, it sounded just like mischief over 5,000. So I had pointed out, I was like, which one of these are you going to pick? Why are you charging me with the same thing twice? That doesn't even make sense. And they couldn't explain it to me, whatever. So I went in and talked to a lawyer, and I tell him, these two charges that I got. And so he's like, just don't say anything, right? It's like, don't talk. You don't have to talk to them, and just, you'll get bail tomorrow and we'll figure it out from there. So I'm like, okay, sounds good. So, they take me in and out of my cell probably 3 times over the course of the night to try to interrogate me, which I wasn't interested in. And plus I told him, I was like, I don't even understand how this works. Like I said, you're trying to interrogate me about something I had no part of. Like, so I don't even have even if I wanted to talk to you, which I don't, I have nothing to offer you. So it's like this big fucking, we're just sitting here looking stupid, staring at each other for nothing. Like, I don't even know what we're going to do here, so I just decided, fine, I'm just going to start asking you guys questions then. How do you like that? Like, why is it that you guys thought that it was a good idea to uphold illegal mandates where you have one group of people trying to mow over another group of people? I'm not sure how you didn't think that there was going to be conflict, and how, the individual right, which is freedom of choice and freedom of, conscience, and freedom to choose with informed consent for medical procedures, which are all rights and legislation that we have, why we wouldn't just go with that so that there wouldn't be this big fucking war about it. Like, that could have been really easy. And I'm not sure why you guys didn't choose to do that, but maybe you guys would like to explain to me why you made the choice you did, and how come we're all sitting here in this situation because of that, because you were the one entity that could have said, we can't enforce these things. You guys go ahead and make it legislation, and then we're on the hook. But until then, these aren't laws and I can't enforce them. And to ask me to do so is actually asking me to break the law, and to also, put my integrity, to compromise that, and to create a division between the people, right? And like, they didn't want to answer my questions. They didn't have any answers for me about that, at all. But I had
How long were you
questions.
kept? How long were you kept in custody for?
24 hours, pretty much to the letter.
And they let you out on bail, or did like charges get dropped? Like, what's your legal journey like separate from Jerry's?
So yeah, they did let me out on bail, which was interesting, because at my bail hearing, they said the judge asked the Crown what they had for evidence against me. And the Crown said, and this was what, like, for a mischief over 5,000. So I thought, and this infrastructure charge. And the Crown said, we have undercover officers saying that they saw her transport a bag of weapons. What? Like that had never come up in any of the questions they'd asked me or anything. I was like, fuck am I hearing? Like this is at my bail hearing. So anyways, the judge is like, yeah, fine, $2,000 recognizance, can't be in contact with these people, can't have any weapons, can't protest, can't be in Milk River or anywhere south of there, and see you later. So when I checked in with my corrections officer, because you have to have a corrections officer, it's like a probation officer is what I think that's what the same idea, but you have to have one of those that you check in and you don't even do it. It's not, I mean, it's just a human, but it's on an app now, and I've never actually seen my corrections officer face to face, never.
No, that's all called being part of the panopticon. You are in the cell, they are looking at you. You don't get to look back at them or ask any questions.
Totally.
How is it they got away with like switching like accusations or charges or whatever, like midway? Like something's not clicking here.
I honestly, I still don't know. So when I called my corrections officer, I said, I have one charge, and he was like, no, you don't. You have two. And I said, no, I have one. I'm looking at my paper right now. There's one charge here. And he's like, no, like right below that, there's this, you see that number? And there was a number. It was just a big, long number. And I said, yeah. And he's like, that's another charge. And it's possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose. And that was the first time I'd heard of it. So I argued with him. I was like, there's no way. Nobody told me about that. I didn't, it was never ever addressed. I never saw that. I never signed any paperwork that said that, nobody asked me about that. Like there was no discussion of that at all. And they didn't even say anything about it at my bail hearing. Like there was no discussion of it. So I was surprised to find out from my corrections officer that I had this possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose charge as well. And I don't understand where they're coming up with that. I haven't gotten my disclosure yet, or not all of it, and not been able to go through it completely yet, which is coming up soon. But I'm not sure how they derived that. The only thing that I can think of is the legally owned shotgun that they stole from my house. Basically, I'm calling it theft, is what they tried to say was a possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, even though it's stored properly at my home, legally owned and whatever. So, and it was certainly never on my person or anything like that. So I don't understand how they derived that charge, but that's the only thing that I can think of logically until I can fill the blanks in, but I don't know.
And where are your charges sitting? Like, have you cleared that stuff, or is that still pending?
No, they're still pending. I have a trial set for June 3rd of next year. I ended up getting grouped in. So remember those other 9 people that we forget about sometimes? Well, there's 2 of them that they grouped me in with and decided they wanted to try me alongside of them, even though I don't know them. I couldn't tell you who they are. I mean, it's quite easy to forget about them because I have no clue who they are. I've never met them. I know nothing about them. I don't know anything around the conditions of their charges. They have the same charges that I do, but I don't understand them. I don't know anything about them. And so what it was told to me recently was that the reason the Crown did that was lump me in was for, well, of course, facetious reasons, but the reason that they gave is because they're trying to save time and money. So group these together and then, yeah, exactly. Like, so, I mean, which is ridiculous, as if the fucking government knows anything about efficiency.
The government claiming to try and save time and money is like, this is some right. Dark comedy. It's just what it is.
Yeah. Totally. But that's their excuse. And that was what they, why it happened that way. So my lawyer has prepared or is preparing, and if he hasn't quite yet, he will be filing a notice of separation to have me removed from these 2 people, because there's no reason at all. There's no logical reason at all. And it's not to my benefit in any way. It's actually to my detriment, considering I don't know these people. I don't know what their circumstances are. I don't know anything about them. And if I were to stay in the situation that I'm in, then any evidence that's being used against them can be also used against me. That's how that works when I have nothing to do with these people. So they originally grouped me with them and assigned me, tried to tell And it's unfortunate because my lawyer's busy, and so we had to have a person set in for him just on some of this docket court shit. And of course, they took advantage of it, right? So because he wasn't there to make the argument. But they'd said they'd group me in with these two other people, and then they said that they were assigning us a judge-only trial, and that we weren't eligible for a jury trial, which is complete bullshit. I have federal charges. I'm completely entitled to a jury. So the first thing that I did, or got my lawyer to do, was correct that by filing a notice of re-election for me to have a jury trial, which the Crown freaked out about originally. They did not like that at all, but there's nothing they could do to stop that. So now that has been changed over. And now the second step after the pretrial conference that just happened in September is to file a notice of separation and get me broke off onto my own. And we'll see what happens after that. So I'm still very much in limbo as far as what's going on. And
So you say
the
the Crown is freaked out about you getting a jury trial, and I suspect that's because they have no case and there's nothing for the jury to look at that would give them the conviction.
100%. So, and again, I think honestly that they just grouped us together because I think that they thought that, like, and again, I don't know the circumstances around what they did or didn't find for guns because I wasn't there, but there is, according to what they've told us, and again, I haven't seen disclosure, but the two people that they grouped me together with were apparently in the other trailer, because there was two trailers there at Joanne's, and they were in this other one that potentially guns were found in. So I don't know what kind of evidence they have against these people, if they were involved with anything or they weren't, but it seemed like they were trying to shove me in there because then they could use that information against me when they don't have anything for me, right? So they needed to be able to put me in a situation where they could use something else to try to muddy the waters for my circumstances.
Dirty fucking bastards.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm busy correcting that. So I mean, it's they stalled this entire time. They were always going to stall. Again, it's political, right? They hinged the Emergency Act off of all of this. So they had to stall us out for at least the amount of time that they needed to get their inquiry done as per the legislation, which was 1 year from the time that they pulled it. So they knew that they needed to stave us off, until at least February 14th of 2022, because, and reason why they denied bail, I mean, I told you why, but the real reason is because they can't have these men out here building an income to fight them and telling their own story, right? Telling the truth about the situation. That's detrimental to them, making sure that there's scapegoats for their terrible decision to invoke the EMA.
Right. And since I've been talking to you guys and investigating this, and I mentioned it in my first Newsweek article I wrote back in July, was that this whole thing stinks. And anybody that looks at the evidence, anybody that looks at what's going on here, zooms back out, takes the whole situation into account, can only come to the conclusion that based on what Rouleau said in his, sort of qualified, reluctant approval of Trudeau invoking the act, other evidence in the POEC, like it all hinges on Coutts. The whole house of cards comes down if it's shown that these guys are innocent, and the government will absolutely do everything in their power to not have that happen. Because I mean, it makes them look bad, but like I almost wonder if they care about looking bad anymore because they just do so much other bad shit. Like why are they so worried about this when they're so not worried about looking bad in so many other ways? This is the sort of mystery to me here, because they typically don't care what anybody thinks of them. They do whatever the hell they want, and I'm trying to figure out why they would even care if the Emergencies Act came into question, because they don't care about anything else.
Well, I don't think they care about it coming into question at all. They don't care if we agree or that we trust what they ruled at all. I don't think they care about that. They just needed to get their ruling. And then, at this point, I don't believe it's as critical to them anymore. They can, I mean, because they're very good at getting memory hold, and all the current things to be more overpowering emotionally in the moment than what just took place. So it's not like this. They know the playbook, and they know exactly how to manipulate the people to just forget about it. And I think that they are concerned to because there's a fine line between all power that governments have really basically is fiat power, right? As long as we believe they have the power and we're willing to let them have it, they have it. And if we don't believe that they have the power anymore, or we don't want them to have the power anymore because we don't trust them, then their power becomes flimsy, and it does become at stake, regardless of, and what I mean by that is if their power becomes shaky in their own heads, right? Something only exists if people believe in it, including the people that are participating. And there is a fine line between them losing control and them having total control. And I don't think that they want to ever cross that line or get too close to it. So as long as people believe that the judiciary is still trustworthy and that it's somehow holding these people accountable, then people won't completely lose their belief in the system that we're under right now. And that is still imperative for them to maintain power. And this EMA inquiry, even though, again, we question it, it gives the illusion to those, whatever 50% of the normies out there that don't even understand how the process works or anything about it, and just were like, it didn't watch it or anything, just waited for they approved it, I guess they were good, and there's a big portion of those people in this country. So they just had to get past that post, and then whatever happens after that. Right. I really don't believe they're anywhere near as committed to it at this point as they were before they could get that finalized. And another reason why they didn't let the men out, because they couldn't, the weight of using the Emergencies Act requires a very hefty boogeyman. And if the boogeyman's really the boogeyman, can the boogeyman be walking around on the street, or does that make him less of a boogeyman? So just having them be out of prison basically for lack of a better word, makes them more disarming, and more disarmed, right? Like they can't possibly be the big threat and the big enough one to call the War Measures Act if they're able to walk around on the streets and work and do whatever, right? So when you're painting the picture of someone to be a monster, you have to provide all the conditions. And that's what this is.
Let's fast forward a little bit and strike a hypothetical.
Sure.
Let's assume, for sake of argument, that either due to whatever they find in this envelope or for some other reason, the Crown drops the case, and or it goes to trial and everything gets thrown out because there's nothing there. Let's say that happens that way. So now we're May 2025, June 2025. We're 3 years after the fact. These four guys rotted in remand for 3 years of their life, and now all the truth comes out. They get set free. In your mind, is there any possible method or vehicle by which they can come back after the government for what was done to them? Because it's clearly political interference and injustice.
I don't really think so. Honestly, I don't see much recourse. They're certainly not the first people this has ever happened to. This is not the first time. I mean, maybe the people before them weren't quite as innocent necessarily because of these Mr. Big operations that they do or whatever, but this is the first time that the police have used everyday civilians to construct a political narrative in order to form public opinion. It's not the first time they've gotten away with it either. If we just look back at some of the things that have already taken place, I don't know. I haven't had the energy or the time or even the wherewithal to bother to look that far ahead, because you have to take this one day at a time and one step at a time, and getting ahead of yourself, it really doesn't serve you any justice or any purpose. From my understanding, there's not much we can do. I mean, you can sue the government, but you're going to be in litigation for other however long until they run you out of every cent that you have. And you're utilizing, I mean, you got to find someone that is willing, that specializes that and willing to do that. And, is going to work for maybe a percentage of the earnings. And then again, that's taxpayer money. So the government doesn't really get held accountable for anything. It's just more burden to the taxpayer. I don't know, Gord. I honestly, there's a lot of people that really like to focus in on that, and they're, and they walk around feeling vindicated on our behalf because it's like they're gonna sue. There's I hope you hold them, and sue them for every penny, and like that makes them feel better. But the reality is, if you look into case law in Canada with successful lawsuits against governments, like they're fucking few and far between. And I don't think that I want to spend any longer than it takes to get this dealt with tied up in that fucking court system, to be honest with you. It's not a fun place. It's not a fair place. And the people that play in there are the most rottenest. Some of them are some of the most rottenest people that you could bother to have to deal with on the prosecutor side of the bench. And I just can't imagine wanting to spend my days in there rather than enjoying the rest of my life. It's just, it doesn't sound like a good enough trade-off, and we're not money people. And there's no amount of money that will replace your time or your children's time, or the time that, or irreparable damage that's possibly been done to, child-father relationships. Like there's no amount of money that makes that right.
This is true. This is true. The scales of justice have to be leveled out in some way, though. Like you said, it's not the place of people outside of you or Jerry's relationship or any of the other guys to pick that fight for you. However, in the minds of people who are interested in, what is right, what is true, what ought to be, that's going to be a question. I don't have the answers, but it's certainly going to be a question for many people.
Of course. And I guess as Canadians, again, here's what I hope to come out of it. It's not monetary in value, but I do believe it's probably one of the most lavish gifts that we could ever give ourselves. And that's that I'd hope that after watching all of this and seeing how difficult recourse is, or next near impossible, that people will be inspired enough to want to work together to figure out exactly how do we change this constitution and this system to not be the inverted reality that they taught us that it was, so that we can start to ensure that the people that come after us don't have to live in the same fashion. And to me, that should be what is looked at here, and something that we can do together so that everyone feels like they were vindicated. Because it's not us that they're after. You know what I mean? They don't care about Jaclyne. They don't care about Jerry or Tony or Chris. It's got nothing to do with the individuals. We're not taking this personally, really. They're after all of us. And so we just happen to be the first round in this battle of the dead crows strung up for everyone for the other crows to see. Okay, so it's
they really are commie authoritarians then, right? Like they've got a veneer of supposed freedom and democracy, but they literally are Stalin's boot on our face forever if we let them. Yes. And you think the key is to somehow begin work on changing the system to get rid of the boot?
I do. I think it's time to get rid of the crown. Actually, it's not the crown needs to go. And I do believe that there's an inverted reality going on out there that's being spoke around. That's a globalist tactic that's really confusing people. And it's this word decolonization. And they make it sound like it means genocide of the original people to the people that came. And that's not what it means at all. Decolonization means bye-bye crown. and all of the fucking abusive colonial policies that allow the crown to abuse the citizens and the resources of the lands in which they have captivated. So
Unfortunately, I think a lot of the leftoids who hear that term are not thinking of it at all
no,
in the
because
way you are.
but you know why exactly? And I'm watching that and I'm laughing at them because I'm going, they are perverting the word for you to make you hate your fellow man and want to commit atrocities for their sins, as a matter of fact, because again, they project it onto you, so you take the heat for the things that they do. And this is no different. And I would like to see us decolonized of the fucking crown in Canada. I'd like to see a we the people constitution where we're in control. I would love to see that.
I
So,
remember being in Australia in 1999 when they had a referendum on becoming a republic and finally separating from the crown and Mother England, as it were. It failed. It failed for a number of reasons. I think the Republican side in Australia didn't quite have how they were going to redo the Australian Constitution, such as it was, or whatever the document's called, and also age and demographics, and there's cultural attachments, right? Like there's just a sort of a lot of boomer con older normies that God and Queen and country, right? Like they're never going to give that up.
no, you'd be surprised, honestly, how little there is of that. And actually, the crown has known this, the monarch has known this for quite some time, that the notion, because of how far Christians have come away from Christianity as far as practicing it in their daily lives, the notion now that God came down out of the sky and anointed some inbreds from Scotland to rule over everybody is quite a ridiculous notion, actually. Most people don't buy into that shit, and they haven't for decades, which is why, the crown had to adjust its power in through the UN and off of, governance over top of the Commonwealth, because they knew, I mean, they study this stuff, right? They study us very, very closely so that they can know where our mindset is going before it goes there, so that they can either adjust it to what they need to maintain power or to shift, the perception. And that's exactly what happened with the crown through the UN Charter 47, which does talk about decolonization, and not in a genocidal manner, by the way. But I think that there's a lot of people in Canada now that understand that, the way the system is set up, it's set up for like a colony is designed to be set up for the kingdom to extract from. And of course, the establishment does not want to give up that system, because since there's been no ruling monarch, our establishment has been extracting from us and from our resources for their personal benefit. And there's a lot for them to lose. That's why it doesn't matter. They don't care whether there's blue team or red team. They don't give a shit at all. Because as long as they're all in that building and attached to that establishment, they are in a position of power to extract for themselves, and they all do, every last one of them. And the bigger the bureaucracy gets, the poorer the country gets, because the more thieves there are with their hands in the cookie jar. And that's just the way it is. And we have to understand that Canada was built on tyranny. It was.
I mean, I wouldn't be too upset if we had like some kind of limited scope tactical nuclear strike on Ottawa. Probably a net benefit for everybody.
I don't know. I don't wish to see anything demolished. We can't even keep the goddamn infrastructure as antiquated as it is up and running right now, hardly, let alone do we need to destroy what we already got? We should be adding to it, upgrading it, and doing all kinds of things.
I don't mean the infrastructure. I mean the administrative state and all of the scum who lord over us,
Well, and I mean, that's a very easy thing to do if we, had I mean, I think there's been times throughout the 150 years where we've had some responsible government where they, we're like, well, shit, if we're at least going to steal from, the resources and off the taxes, we better at least pay the bills so that, we're not making it completely terrible for their, way of living here for the peasants. We don't really want to get them riled up too much, right? Like, at least in some of those eras, there was a few, administrations that were willing to keep the debt, to zero or just, slightly above that, and keep the lights on and the bills paid, and, at least extract a few resources, and maybe, have half of the healthcare system, in play. But I mean, right now in particular, that hasn't happened for the last 8 years, right? So yeah, again, abusive system will produce abusive people who will abuse, and that's what we got here. So the only way, in my opinion, to fix that is to fix the system which allows them to abuse.
Speaking of abuse, how's Jerry doing? Because as I understand it, he's in a sort of gang unit type deal in Calgary and has been witness to a fair bit of abuse himself.
Yeah, he's not necessarily in a gang unit, but because of the characters that are now coming in and out of the unit that he's on, which is a maximum security unit where most of the heavy offenders, so people who have murdered or, have been accused of murder or manslaughter or assaults with a weapon or stuff like that, right? So those are the guys that he's housed with. So basically they just matched his accusations up to the appropriate segment of crime, I guess, and threw him in with those guys. So he definitely is, it's a precarious situation. Again, we try to be as least judgmental as possible, because just like him, in remand, you're innocent until proven guilty. But there's very evidence that, there's probably some characters in there that it's not their first go around at all. And, in Calgary these days, there's a lot of different things happening as far as, the culture initiatives, let's just put it that way, that are taking place on the streets. And so, of course, the people that tend to be committing more of the serious crimes or being accused of serious crimes also happen to be associated to gangs. So as a result, by default, there's a bit of gang rivalry going on in there from time to time. Nothing that any of us understand, including Jerry. But there have been some beatings. There's been some tension in there lately. And, there's not a lot that I can talk about there, because depending on who might hear me talking about it, it could actually put him in jeopardy. There's very little that he's going to be able to talk about until he gets out of there about the actual real ramifications of being in a ward like that. But for now, I guess it's just important for people to know that it's day by day, and safety is not a guarantee. For the most part, Jerry gets along with everyone, and has, since day one. He's very adaptable that way, and I'm very proud of the way he's handling it. But there are days where he's nervous, and I'm not going to get into that too much, because, like I said, if the wrong person on the outside were to hear that and convey that back into the inside, that could cause problems for him. It's that touchy. There's a lot of politics, let's just put it that way, for in the jail world. And there's a lot of people that it's a revolving door for. So unfortunately, you could be a problem this week, maybe get bailed the next, and 2 weeks, there you are again. It's not a picnic. I can tell you that.
Prison, jail, remand, whatever you want to call it, it's no joke. I understand Jerry's something of an artist and sketches as a way to cope with all this.
Yeah, he especially when he was in solitary confinement, which he has been several times. I just did a tally the other day for his lawyer, and he spent 74 days in solitary confinement in total in the last 18 months. Nothing for bad behavior, none of it. The first 2 weeks were when they first put him in there, and they called it COVID quarantine, because of course he wasn't taking a vaccine or getting a test. That was not happening. So they threw him in solitary for 2 weeks because of that. They also took his contact lenses. And so when they finally released him out of solitary to general population, he's basically legally blind without glasses or his contacts. So he got to spend his first couple of weeks in general population inside a max security, blind, couldn't see, couldn't tell who anybody was. It was very, very, very traumatizing, to say the least, for him and for me, because he was definitely scared during that time, with good reason. I mean, imagine being in a prison with people accused of murder when you can't even see their faces. So that was a crazy time. And at that time, he had conditions against me. They had internally put on him, so I wasn't able to talk to him directly. During that time, I was getting this information through friends and family members that he was able to speak with. So it was hard. It was really hard to know that he was in such distress and peril and not even being able to comfort him at all during that time. It's, they're just sick. What they do, they don't care. They go right straight for the jugular to try and see if they can mentally break you right away, like right out of the gates. Which, I mean, I'm lucky, and Jerry is very fortunate that he's such a strong-minded individual. And I don't think he even knew actually how incredibly mentally resilient he is until he was in the situation. I don't think that if you had a conversation with him, that he would have expected that he would be able to deal with this in the way that he has. But by the grace of God, as the only thing that I can think of, he's handled it like a champion. But like I said, there are days where, and I can tell the difference in his mood. I can tell because he's trying to tell me, but he's talking under his breath and I can't really hear, and he can't repeat himself. Kind of those are the times when I know that it's just not cool at the moment. He can't really tell me out loud in case somebody hears. So, and I can't really hear him that great. So, I just have to basically, it's just my cue to be like, oh, I get it, and kind of drop it. Right. And try to just talk about stupid things after that to, either cheer him up or just change the subject. But, and there's not a phone call or conversation that we don't have that's not recorded and monitored, right? So you can imagine, I mean, we have nothing to hide at all, but it does make it really weird. It is for me anyways. I feel very much invaded, and it's hard for me to have, like, even just to be, I mean, I've let some of it go and it's better, but like even just to be, your regular affectionate selves, it's weird. It's like you have a peeping Tom listening to you. Do you know what I mean? Like it's fucking weird. And it makes it hard to just be open and candid and let the things flow that need to flow, because that there's people listening to you. And it's, I don't know, I for myself, I can say that it's weird. It's so weird. And I haven't had a nice, good, honest, open, candid, nurturing conversation with Jerry in 18 months. They don't happen. I mean, they do. I try my best. He tries his best, but it's,
well, they're punishing you at the same time, just like they're
yes,
punishing Chris Lizak's kids and Chris Carbert's family and Tony's
right,
mother. You guys are all
right,
being punished.
exactly. And like, even because of the trivial things, even that they say, like, because, like even in some of the shit that they were bringing into like the bail hearings and stuff, like talking about Jerry's tone on his phone calls, you're like, oh, he sounded mad. It's like, you're not allowed to be mad now. Like mad's against the law. Like
That's not evidence.
right, exactly. But I mean, but you know what though? But for him sitting there listening to that and then hearing all that, and then the judge saying, no, you can't get out. You know what I mean? Like it does something to you. So then he's like, well, I'll try not to sound mad. Like he literally, like if he's mad, he feels like he can't vent and just say if he's frustrated or mad. I mean, don't get me wrong. We do sometimes, and sometimes, you do forget because you're so fucking emotional that somebody's actually listening, but he's guarded everything because he's like, God, if I sound mad about something, they're going to take this and play it in court. Like it's that bad. You know what I mean? About how you start self-censoring and guarding yourself because they tried to point out that you sound mad as a way to keep you in jail for fucking ever. Like
It really is.
it
It
is.
really is a Kafka-esque nightmare what you guys are
Yeah.
going through. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So it's, yeah,
Oh.
it's stupid. It's just, and it's,
Am I like, if they ever call me again, like I haven't heard from the boys in a little while, but if they ever call me again, would it look bad on them if I just badmouth the people listening? Because I'm on the outside and I'm in the United States and I can do that and they can all go pound sand. I mean, a
It's
conduit for
hard to say,
frustration.
like, yeah, and I get that. And like, and sometimes, I mean, he does, trust me, Jerry won't hold back. If there's a guard being a loser, he'll tell me, but he's like, Louis being a dickhead today. And I told him so, whatever. Like he I mean, it just depends on kind of where we're at. Like when you're closer to court, you kind of think more about court. When you're far away from it, it kind of doesn't run through your head as much. You know what I mean? So it just kind of depends on where we're sitting as to kind of how we're responding or how we're acting. But I mean, I have to say that for the most part, the guards in there have been good to him. And we're very thankful about that. Like there's been
Well,
plenty of them.
some of them are probably half decent people,
Yes.
and maybe triple digit IQ if we're lucky, and can look
Yeah.
at what's going on here and understand that they're being railroaded and have some empathy for the situation.
Totally.
Maybe
And
some of
like
them, maybe
even
not all.
it's funny actually. There's one he tells me about, and she calls him Freedom, and she's a female guard, and she's liberal, and she calls him Freedom like as a joke. She's laughing at him, and he doesn't care. He's like, I don't care. She's nice to me, and that's all that matters. And like we don't agree politically at all, and I don't care that she calls me Freedom. She's making fun of me, but I like it. You know what I mean? So it's like they actually have a good relationship, and he's like, and for him, that's like encouraging because he's like, this is how it fucking should be. We shouldn't be willing to mow each other over in inhumane ways because we have different fucking political views, right? Like, so for him, it's like
I don't
he
know if
likes
that's
it.
true though, because what ends up happening, and whatever, this might not be on the mind of this particular guard, but if knowing what we know, and if understanding the political situation as is and understanding reality,
Mm-hmm.
you keep voting. I mean, this is going to sound kind of like, anarcho libertarian or whatever, but like if you keep voting, that tells me that you don't care about human life whatsoever, and you're giving a seal of approval to this shit show, which is antagonistic to the rest of us. Like, why should I be friends with
Oh,
you or respect you as a human being at all?
oh, totally. And I think that, and it doesn't, you don't have to be friends with or respect someone just to not to mow them over, right? Like that's the
Well, no,
situation.
we don't want to mow them over, but by their actions, they're approving
Yeah.
of us being mowed over. Like, you know what I'm
Right. Oh,
saying?
oh yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting though is like this guard in particular, I don't believe that she consents. And I think that's why, because I mean, she could just totally be disdaining with him. You know what I mean? Like she doesn't have to, she jokes with him and you know what I mean? And like it's trying to carry on and have a bit of a good time about it, which indicates to me that she doesn't see him as a threat at all, which also indicates to me that she understands that he's there where you shouldn't be. And so even if it's even, and my guess is even if she's not there yet and is not willing to admit it, my guess is that Jerry might be her awakening. She's just not there, not fully there yet. You never know.
That's a very positive way to look at it. Any other bright spots? Anything else that like keeps you being positive and marching forward and facing this adversity in the clearly strong way that you have thus far?
Um, I just think, I mean, I'm a big believer in quantum physics, if you want if you want to know the truth. And so, yeah, I know.
Okay.
Like, so I mean, your thoughts create your reality. It's the old Henry Ford. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So in my belief system, there's no room for doubt and there's no room for negativity and woe is me and victimizing yourself unless you want to fucking lose. And I don't lose. I'm not a loser. I'm not interested in losing. I don't play to lose and I don't have a losing mindset. So to attack it from that fucking angle would be just jumping on the loser train, which is not who I am and not the outcome that I want. So I'm just not going to participate in that. That's kind of the end all be all for it, really.
That's a good way to go. Jaclyne Martin, I've had you on here for like 2 hours now. Any other thoughts? Any other remarks about the case, Jerry? Yourself, your feelings about this? Is there anything else you want to expound on here?
No, and I mean it's interesting. I know I appreciate you having me on this long, and I can get out in the weeds, so I don't even know if I covered what people want to hear. Hopefully people got some, benefit or enjoyment out of it, but I mean, it's a long story. There's so much more that I could say that I just, it's too much to put in a podcast. But I think that it's important for people to know and understand that one of the main reasons that, we're doing as well as we are is because we had a beautiful advocate by the name of Margaret Mackay step in and run towards us when everyone else is running away from us. And she's been an absolute treasure, at least, in my opinion. And she's done everything in her possible, power to get us attention in a way where people want to support us and financially. And that financial help has been absolutely priceless. And I just want to let people know that we are being supported. It's slow and it's steady, but it's working out exactly the way we need it to. We're very grateful. And, I think it's important that people know how grateful we are for everyone from wherever. I mean, we've had people supporting us from Australia, Scotland, the United States, like all over the world. And I just want people that are listening to this to understand how important that is and how much we appreciate that and we're grateful for that. And we wouldn't be where we are without the good people of this earth, because it's not just of this country. I mean, that's where most of it's been coming from. Most of our support has been coming from, Canada, but we've had it from all over. But the good people of this earth who are willing, again, to come in and make sure that those of us that are willing to put ourselves in the line of fire don't do it in vain. And we salute you. So thank you to everyone that's done anything, whether you volunteered, whether you've sent $5 or you've sent $1,000 or you've sent thoughts and prayers or you've sent a letter. Every single one of these things matters.
The letters are very important.
They're super important. And you'll never know what those mean when, Jerry's sitting in a lockdown because there's been a fight on his units and he's now locked up for 20 hours a day and he's got to try to, make something out of the time that he's in his cell. And I mean, he's reading letters and he's drawing pictures and, he's getting solace out of the kindness of other people who haven't forgotten about him. And that means everything. It means everything to us. And I just want your audience to know that there are a lot of really good people out there. So when you thinking that humanity is completely shat the bed, and I know that that is a sentiment, trust me, I've got my days too. But I also remember,
big news items from last week have got many people thinking that.
Well, and you know what? There are a lot of people out there that I think you better get right with yourself and go look at, say the things that you're saying on the internet in the fucking mirror to yourself and see how that makes you feel. That's all I got to say about that. And, straighten yourselves around because I'm embarrassed for you. But they're really good people out there, and we can't forget about those people, and we can't lose those people in the weeds of all the retards running around us. So I just like to take any opportunity I can to elevate the good people, because again, positive reinforcement is better than shitting on people and telling them how crappy they are and how much they disgust you. I prefer to just tell the people that are doing the right thing how much I love and appreciate them, because I think that that's more worth my time. So.
You too are one of those good people, Jaclyne Martin.
I appreciate that word.
God willing, Jerry and the rest of the boys will be reunited with you as they should be. All right. Thank you for your time, Jaclyne. If there's anywhere you want to direct people to follow the story or contact you or follow you at all, let us, please.
Yeah, I am on Twitter. I'll be honest with you. I'm an anon on Twitter, and I'm not giving my handle because I like to actually be engaged there, and I don't need the hassle. So I am on Twitter if you want. I'm just not very engaging there at Jaclyne_Martin. or actually _M, just M. So, I mean, I do post some stuff there from time to time, but the best place if you want to hear about us and what's going on will always be Alberta Political Prisoners on Facebook, which is where Margaret operates from. She's in contact with us constantly. Anything that we have that's important that we want shared gets shared through there. And then we also, I mean, we've been working on a bit of a podcast on Thursday nights with Danielle. That's at Danny Canada. You can find her at Danny Canada 1980 on Twitter, and we're trying to do something there weekly just to try to keep people in the loop. So you can always follow us there. But if you're confused, Alberta Political Prisoners at Facebook is where we're at, and probably where we'll be for forever. So,
All right, thanks very much. Appreciate your time, and Godspeed and way of the road.